Hi, you're watching Echoes of Life.
I used to believe my life was perfect, or at least close enough to it that I could fake the rest. From the outside, people would look at me and see the polished surface. A loving husband, a beautiful home in the city, carefully curated dinner parties where laughter filled the air. Friends would tell me how lucky I was. Colleagues at work, women I barely spoke to, would whisper compliments about how together I always looked. But they didn't see the truth. They didn't see the way I sometimes caught my own reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. They didn't see the exhaustion under my smile or the way I carefully measured every word, every step, every gesture to maintain an image that was quietly crumbling. My name is Amelia Grant, and if you had asked me 6 months ago what happiness meant, I would have said stability, routine, the kind of love that doesn't keep you awake at night, but lets you rest easy. That's what I thought I had with Jason. Jason, my husband for almost 10 years. He was charming, successful, the kind of man who could walk into a crowded room and command attention without even trying. People gravitated toward him. When we first met, I was drawn to that magnetic pull. I had been a shy girl back then, the kind who avoided the spotlight, and Jason was everything I wasn't. He was confidence, ambition, and certainty wrapped in a perfectly tailored suit. I remember the first night we met vividly. It was at a networking event I hadn't even wanted to attend. I stood awkwardly by the buffet table, clutching a glass of wine I had no intention of finishing. Then Jason appeared. Sleeves rolled to the elbows, tie loosened just enough to look approachable, and that smile. He asked me if I preferred red or white wine. That was his opening line. Simple, but it worked. I laughed, and for some reason, I let him walk me home that night. 10 years later, I still remember that first walk. He told me about his dreams, about how he wanted to build a life that meant something. He talked as if the world was waiting for him, and in that moment, I believed it was waiting for me too, as long as I was standing next to him. For a long time, I followed him into that dream. But dreams change, or maybe people do. The cracks started to show in small ways. At first, it was the late nights at work. Jason had always been dedicated to his career, so I didn't question it. Big client, he would say. Tough negotiations, he would add. He was persuasive, and I wanted to believe him. But then there were the little inconsistencies. The smell of cologne on his jacket that wasn't his. The faint lipstick stain on the rim of a coffee cup left in his car. The way his eyes would flicker with something guilt. Fear? Whenever I reached for his phone. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, we were comfortable, weren't we? We had built a life together, a home that looked like something out of a magazine. We had friends, routines, traditions. Surely if something was wrong, I would know. Surely Jason would tell me. But then there was Zoe. I should stop here and tell you about Zoe, because she isn't just a side note in this story. She is the story. We met at a charity gala 3 years ago. She was younger than me by nearly 8 years, with the kind of confidence I wished I had at her age. Zoe was bold, magnetic, the type of woman who drew eyes the moment she entered a room. She had this laugh, loud, unrestrained, filling every corner of the space until you couldn't help but notice her. Where I was cautious, she was fearless. Where I was measured, she was spontaneous. I liked her instantly. I told myself she reminded me of who I used to be, or maybe who I wanted to be. We exchanged numbers, started meeting for coffee. Soon she was coming over for dinner, joining Jason and me for weekends out, slipping seamlessly into our lives. I thought she was lonely, maybe searching for a family she didn't have, and I was happy to give her that. I let her close, but Jason let her closer. The betrayal didn't hit me all at once. It was like a puzzle I didn't want to solve, each piece appearing one at a time. A text message flashing on his screen late at night. Can't wait to see you again. A bottle of wine missing from the rack, one I had been saving for an anniversary. A trace of perfume lingering in the hallway after Zoe left our house one evening, a scent I didn't wear. My chest tightened with every sign, but I said nothing. Not yet. Silence, I told myself, was safer. If I ignored it, maybe it would go away. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe my mind was weaving paranoia into nothing. But silence doesn't last forever. One Friday evening, everything changed. Jason had promised to be home early. I cooked his favorite meal, roasted chicken with rosemary, mashed potatoes, and a bottle of red wine I'd been saving. I set the table, lit candles, tried to create the kind of atmosphere we used to have. But as the hours ticked by, the food grew cold, and I sat there alone, staring at my untouched glass of wine. When he finally stumbled in, it was nearly midnight. His shirt was half untucked, his tie stuffed into his jacket pocket. His eyes were tired, but not with work. There was something different about the way he carried himself, like guilt draped over his shoulders. "Sorry, love," he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. "Long day? You wouldn't believe the client I had to deal with." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But then his phone buzzed on the counter. He never left it out of reach, not anymore. This time, though, he was too distracted to grab it. The preview on the screen lit up. "I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was..." It was from Zoe. My hand trembled. I don't even remember breathing in that moment. It felt like the world around me blurred, every sound muffled except the pounding of my heart. I didn't mean to look, I told myself. But maybe I did. Maybe part of me had been waiting for this confirmation. Jason's eyes darted to the phone. He grabbed it quickly, shoving it into his pocket. "Work thing," he muttered. His voice was steady, too steady. He didn't even ask if I saw the message. I should have confronted him right then. I should have screamed, demanded answers, thrown the wine glass against the wall. But instead, I stood frozen. My throat burned with words I couldn't say. My chest ached with betrayal I couldn't release. That night, I slipped into bed beside him. He fell asleep within minutes, his breath steady and calm, while I stared at the ceiling, my body stiff, my mind racing. The truth had settled heavy in my chest. Jason was cheating. With Zoe, my friend, the woman I had invited into my home, into my life. But as much as it hurt, I knew I couldn't act yet. Not until I had more. Not until I saw the full extent of the betrayal. Because betrayal isn't just about sex. It's about trust. About every promise whispered in the dark. Every plan made for the future. And if Jason and Zoe thought they could rob me of that and leave me broken, they were wrong. I would uncover it all, piece by piece, lie by lie, until there was nothing left hidden. And then I would decide what to do. That was the beginning. The moment my life split into before and after. And if you think this is just another story of a woman scorned, let me assure you, it's not. Because sometimes betrayal isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning. Silence has a strange way of becoming louder than words. In our house, it began creeping into the spaces where laughter once lived. Daniel and I used to talk about everythings. Our dreams, our fears, even the small annoyances of the day. But recently, our conversations had become thinner, as though every word carried too much weight to speak aloud. I noticed it first during dinner. We sat across from each other, the candlelight flickering softly against the polished wood table. My fork scraped against the plate, an ugly sound in the heavy quiet. Daniel scrolled through his phone, the blue glow painting his face, making him seem distant, unreachable. "Work again?" I asked, my voice too light, as if I were trying to convince myself I didn't care about the answer. He looked up, startled, then forced a quick smile. "Yeah, just a few things I need to wrap up." His tone was casual, but his eyes didn't meet mine for more than a second. That used to be enough for me. His explanations, his reassurances. But now, something inside me stirred, sharp and restless. A woman's intuition, people call it. That whisper inside you that says, something isn't right. At night, lying next to him, I could feel the gap widening. His body was warm, close, but his mind felt galaxies away. He used to hold me in his sleep, his hand draped over my waist, his breath steady against my neck. Now he turned the other way, leaving me to the silence, to the ache of wondering where he really was, even as he lay beside me. I tried to silence the doubts. I told myself he was stressed, that the promotion he'd been chasing at work was finally consuming him. But the more I tried to rationalize, the more the unease grew. And then, one evening, I found the first crack. Daniel had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. That in itself wasn't unusual. But when I walked by, I saw an email notification pop up on the screen. Just a name. A woman's name. Zoe. The subject line was simple, but it carried a weight that crushed me instantly. Last night. My breath hitched. I froze, staring at the glowing words as though they might vanish if I blinked. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might echo through the walls. I didn't open the email. I couldn't. My hands trembled, torn between needing to know and being terrified of the truth. Instead, I closed the laptop softly, as though that single action might erase what I'd seen. But it didn't erase anything. It planted a seed. For the next week, every moment with Daniel felt like a lie I was being forced to play along with. I studied his movements, his excuses, the way he left the house early and came home late. Every detail became evidence, every gesture a potential confession. I laughed when he laughed, smiled when he smiled, but inside I was unraveling. Sometimes I stood in front of the bathroom mirror at night, searching my own reflection for answers. Was I imagining things? Was I losing my mind? Or was the man I loved hiding a life I wasn't meant to see? One evening, as I washed my hands, I whispered to my reflection, "Who is Zoe?" The mirror didn't answer, but deep down, I already knew. That night, lying awake while Daniel slept peacefully beside me, I made a decision. If he wouldn't tell me the truth, I would find it myself. And that decision was the first step toward a discovery that would change everything. The hardest part about doubt is how it creeps into everything you do. It follows you like a shadow, clinging to every smile, every kiss, every whispered, "I love you." You start to wonder if those words are real, or if they've become just another part of the performance. For me, doubt became a constant companion. It colored my mornings, tainted my afternoons, and haunted my nights. A few days after I saw that email notification, Daniel told me he'd be working late again. He kissed me on the forehead, his lips soft but hurried, and grabbed his jacket. "I'll try not to be too late," he said, avoiding my eyes. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Okay, don't overwork yourself." He left. The door clicked shut, and then the silence returned. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty hallway. Something inside me snapped. I couldn't take the not knowing anymore. If Daniel was lying to me, if Zoe was more than just a name on his screen, then I had to face it, so I followed him. The decision felt reckless, like stepping off the edge of a cliff. I waited 10 minutes, then grabbed my keys and slipped into my car. The night air was crisp, filled with the smell of rain. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, my heart thundering against my ribs. His car was easy to spot. He drove quickly, weaving through the streets with a familiarity that suggested he'd taken this route before. I kept my distance, headlights dim, praying he wouldn't notice me in the rearview mirror. He didn't go to the office. Instead, he pulled into a quiet neighborhood on the other side of town. Rows of tidy houses lined the street, their windows glowing warmly with the comforts of family life. Daniel parked near the corner and stepped out, glancing around as though to make sure no one was watching. And then I saw her. A woman. Long dark hair, slim figure. She emerged from the front door of a small charming house. She smiled at him, smiled in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. He smiled back, and in that smile, my world cracked wide open. I wanted to scream, to run out of the car and demand an explanation, to tear the truth from his lips. But I couldn't move. My body betrayed me, frozen in place, forced to watch the man I loved step into someone else's embrace. Their hug wasn't long, wasn't overtly passionate, but it was intimate in a way that cut deeper than any kiss could have. It was familiarity. It was comfort. It was home. I sat in the darkness, the steering wheel slick beneath my palms. Hot tears blurred my vision, spilling down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. The name echoed in my mind like a cruel refrain. Zoe. When I finally drove away, I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was something far worse, an emptiness, a hollow ache that settled deep inside my chest. The kind of pain that doesn't scream but whispers. Back at home, I crawled into bed beside him hours later when he finally returned. He smelled faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. He kissed my cheek, murmured, "Good night," and drifted off to sleep as though nothing had happened. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, my heart breaking in silence. And in that silence, I made a promise to myself. If Daniel was going to live in lies, then I would uncover every single one of them, no matter how much it hurt. There are two kinds of pain. The one that burns hot, explosive, impossible to contain. And the one that lingers quietly, eating you alive from the inside out. Mine was the second kind. The morning after I saw Daniel with her, the world looked the same, yet everything had changed. The sunlight streaming through the curtains felt cruel, mocking. Birds sang outside our window, their songs piercing my raw nerves. Daniel brewed coffee in the kitchen like always, humming faintly, as if nothing in our lives had shifted. But everything had shifted. When he handed me a steaming mug, his eyes met mine, warm and gentle. "You look tired," he said. "Didn't sleep well?" I forced a smile. "Just couldn't stop thinking." He nodded, leaning down to kiss my forehead. The gesture felt like a dagger now, not a comfort. All day, I replayed what I'd seen the night before. That woman, her smile, their embrace, the perfume clinging to his shirt. Her name was Zoe. I was almost certain of it. I remembered the notification, the way Daniel had closed his laptop so quickly, the way his voice had changed when he said her name once by mistake, claiming she was a colleague. The lies had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. By evening, the quiet betrayal weighed too heavily on me. I couldn't breathe in the same house without knowing the truth. So while Daniel showered, I crept into his office. His laptop was closed, but the faint warmth told me he had used it recently. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling with both fear and resolve. I opened it, password protected. Of course. But I knew him. I knew him better than anyone. His passwords always revolved around simple things. Birthdays, anniversaries, our dog's name. I tried them all, my breath hitching with each failed attempt, until click. The screen unlocked. My heart dropped. Emails. Dozens of them. Conversations late into the night. Words filled with intimacy, with longing, with the kind of raw honesty he no longer gave me. I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was everything. When I'm with you, I feel alive again. Each sentence sliced me open, deeper and deeper. And then I saw it. Her name, bold at the top of the screen. Zoe. The room spun. I slammed the laptop shut, gasping for air as though the truth itself was suffocating me. My hands shook uncontrollably, my vision blurred with tears. He wasn't just slipping away from me. He was already gone. When Daniel stepped into the room moments later, towel draped around his neck, droplets of water clinging to his hair, he smiled at me like nothing was wrong. "Everything okay?" he asked. I swallowed hard, shoving my pain deep down where he couldn't see it. "Yeah, everything's fine." Because if there's one thing betrayal teaches you, it's how to wear a mask. That night, I lay beside him, wide awake while he slept peacefully. The man I loved had given his heart to someone else, and I was left with the silence, with the weight of secrets I could no longer ignore. But beneath the heartbreak, something else began to take root. Not just sorrow, not just fear, but strength. If Daniel thought I was blind, he was wrong. If he thought I would crumble quietly, he underestimated me. I wasn't sure what my next move would be, but one thing was certain. I would no longer let him dictate the story of my life. This time, the ending would be mine to write. Grief has a sound. It isn't always sobs or screams. Sometimes it's the quiet creak of floorboards at midnight, or the hum of a refrigerator when the rest of the world sleeps. It's silence that weighs heavier than words. That silence lived with me now. Daniel drifted through our days as if nothing was wrong, as if he wasn't slicing my heart open one lie at a time. He kissed me before work, asked me about dinner, laughed at meaningless shows on Netflix. To anyone else, we looked like the perfect couple. But I knew better. Behind every smile, every tender gesture, there was her, Zoe. And though he didn't know it yet, I was done being blind. I started small, checking his phone when he left it unattended, noticing how often he stepped outside to take calls, listening for the subtle changes in his tone when he texted late at night. It was all there, written in the rhythm of his deception. One night, when he fell asleep with his phone beside him, I dared to scroll. My hand shook so violently I thought I might drop it. His messages with Zoe weren't just casual. They were passionate, raw, filled with promises. Someday it will be just us. I can't wait until I don't have to sneak around. She doesn't understand me the way you do. That was me. Reduced to a shadow in my own marriage. I felt fury rising in me, sharp and unstoppable, but along with it came clarity. If Daniel wanted to betray me in the dark, I would drag the truth into the light. So I began to document everything. Screenshots, dates, times. Even the smallest detail. I collected it all, storing it in a hidden folder on my laptop far from his reach. The more I gathered, the more my resolve hardened. I wasn't just uncovering his betrayal. I was preparing for war. But in war, you need allies. And strangely enough, I found myself thinking of Zoe. Who was she really? A villain who knowingly stole another woman's husband? Or another woman caught in a different kind of lie? The thought unsettled me. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to blame her for everything. Yet, deep inside, I wondered if she even knew the full truth. Did she know he was still holding my hand at night, still kissing me good morning? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had to meet her, not to fight, not to scream, but to see for myself the woman Daniel thought was worth destroying our life for. Late one night, lying awake beside his sleeping body, I whispered to the darkness, "You've underestimated me, Daniel, because betrayal has a way of breaking you, but it can also build you into something far stronger than you ever imagined." And I was ready to find out which one I would become. It took me 3 days to gather the courage. 3 days of pacing the kitchen, of staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, of asking myself the same haunting question, what if she's nothing like I imagined? Because in my mind, Zoe was an enemy, a thief, the reason my marriage was crumbling. But deep inside, another voice whispered, what if she's a victim too? I found her at a cafe. Not because I wanted to. At least, that's what I told myself, but because Daniel's careless breadcrumbs led me straight to her. A location he shared, a photo she posted. It wasn't difficult to connect the dots. When I walked through the door, the smell of roasted coffee beans wrapped around me, calming and suffocating all at once. My eyes scanned the room, searching. And then I saw her. She was nothing like I expected. Zoe wasn't glamorous or flashy. She wasn't some femme fatale in red lipstick and high heels. She was ordinary, her hair pulled into a loose bun, her face bare of makeup, a book resting in her lap. She looked almost fragile. For a moment, my anger faltered. I approached her table. My voice trembled, but I forced the words out. "Zoe?" Her head snapped up, eyes widening. Confusion flashed across her face before recognition settled in. "You're Emma." The way she said my name, soft, guilty, confirmed everything. Daniel had told her about me. My chest tightened. "Yes," I said, sliding into the chair across from her without asking. "I'm Emma, Daniel's wife." Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked down at her coffee as if it might swallow her whole. Silence stretched between us, heavy, suffocating. Then I spoke again. "I don't know what lies he's told you, but I need to hear your side." Her eyes lifted, shimmering with unshed tears. "I didn't want this." The words cut through me. She went on, her voice trembling. "When I met him, he said your marriage was already over, that you were just roommates. He made me believe." I slammed my palm lightly against the table, not in anger, but in disbelief. Of course he did. Daniel's lies weren't limited to me. He spun different webs for each of us, ensuring we stayed trapped and blind. For the first time, I saw Zoe not as a rival, but as a mirror. She was just another woman standing in the wreckage of his deceit. "I loved him," she whispered, "but now I don't know what to believe anymore." I leaned closer, my voice steady but low. "Believe this," I said. "He betrayed us both." The cafe buzzed around us, but in that moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to just two women and the truth binding them. I didn't know what would come next. Friendship, alliance, or something far more dangerous. But I knew one thing for certain. Daniel had no idea what storm he had just created. The moment Zoe and I left the cafe, something had shifted. We weren't friends, not yet. But we were no longer strangers locked in silent battle either. We were allies, bound not by trust, but by betrayal. We walked side by side in the cool evening air. Street lamps glowed above us, their light spilling across the wet pavement. Neither of us spoke at first. Words felt too heavy, too fragile. Finally, Zoe broke the silence. "What are you going to do, Emma?" I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "I don't know. Some days I want to scream at him. Other days, I want to pretend it never happened. But now," I paused, turning to face her, "now I think the only way forward is to expose him." Her eyes widened. Expose him? Yes. Make him face what he's done. Not just to me, to both of us. We stopped at the corner of the street. Zoe hugged her coat tighter around her shoulders, like she was bracing herself for a storm. "He'll deny it," she whispered. "He'll twist the truth. He always does." "I know," I said. "That's why we need to outsmart him." For the first time, her gaze locked with mine. Behind the fear, I saw something else fire. A quiet, simmering rage. "Then we need a plan," Zoe said, her voice sharper now. I nodded. "A plan to make him confess, in front of people who matter, somewhere he can't run, can't hide." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "The anniversary party." I froze. The party. Our annual celebration. Friends, family, colleagues, all gathered under one roof. It was perfect. And it was dangerous. "Do you really want to do this?" I asked her, searching her face. "Because once we start, there's no turning back." Zoe's hands trembled slightly, but her voice was firm. "He took years from both of us. I won't let him keep the truth hidden any longer." In that moment, under the glow of the street lamp, we shook hands, not as rivals, not as victims, but as women who had nothing left to lose. I felt a strange mixture of fear and relief wash over me. For months I had been drowning in silence, isolated in my pain, but now I wasn't alone. Daniel thought he could play us against each other. He thought we'd never meet, never compare stories, never realize the depth of his lies. But he was wrong. Very wrong. That night, as I lay in bed beside the man I once called my soulmate, I didn't see him the same way anymore. I didn't see a husband. I saw a liar, a manipulator, a man walking blindly toward his own destruction. And the cruelest part? He had no idea that his reckoning had already begun. The days that followed felt like walking on broken glass. Every smile I gave Daniel, every dinner we shared, every quiet moment in our living room. It was all an act, because behind the mask, I was planning his downfall. Zoe and I began meeting in secret, not in cafes anymore, too risky. Instead, we found tucked-away corners of the city. A small library on Elm Street. An old park bench no one used after dark, even my car, parked on a quiet road. We whispered like conspirators, piecing together the puzzle. "Check your bank statements," Zoe advised one evening, sliding a folder across the seat. He used the same excuses with me: business trips, late-night meetings. The receipts don't lie. I opened the folder and felt my stomach twist. Hotel bills, restaurant tabs, all charged during nights he had sworn he was working late. Each page was a blade, but we needed more. Proof strong enough to cut through his charm, his denials, his endless lies. So we dug deeper. Old messages, photos, even the little things. A forgotten scarf in his car, a perfume that wasn't mine, the faint smell of wine on his shirt when he claimed he hadn't been drinking. Piece by piece, the picture sharpened, and it was uglier than I imagined. Yet in the middle of all that darkness, Zoe and I found an odd sort of comfort. We laughed sometimes, bitterly, at the similarities in our stories. "He told you he hated jazz?" I asked once. She smirked. "Yeah. But he took me to a jazz club every Friday. We stared at each other for a moment, then burst out laughing. It wasn't joy. It was survival. But even as we grew closer, doubt gnawed at me. What if Daniel found out? What if he turned everything back on us? What if, after all this,
he still won. Late at night, I'd lie awake, watching his chest rise and fall beside me. His face looked so peaceful in sleep, so innocent. It made me sick, because I knew the monster that lived behind that mask.
One night, Zoe said something that stuck with me. "Do you ever wonder, Emma, if he even knows how much damage he's done?" I stared at her, shaking my head. No, he doesn't think about the consequences. Men like Daniel never do. They believe love is infinite, forgiveness automatic. They never imagine the day it all collapses. Her eyes hardened. "Then let's show him." The plan was simple, brutal, unforgiving. At the anniversary party, in front of everyone, the truth would come out. We wouldn't just tell the story, we'd prove it. Photos, messages, receipts. The lies he fed me, the lies he fed Zoe, everything. I looked at the pile of evidence one night, spread across my dining table. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from power. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't drowning, I was rising. And soon, Daniel would learn what it feels like to be stripped bare in front of the people he thought he controlled. The shadows were gathering, and at the center of it all stood Daniel. Smiling, clueless, walking straight into the trap Zoe and I had built. The night before the party, the air felt heavy, like the sky itself knew what was about to happen. I sat at my vanity, brushing my hair, staring at the woman in the mirror. My reflection looked calm, almost serene, but inside a storm raged. Tomorrow would change everything. Zoe called me just before midnight. "You ready?" she whispered. I swallowed. As ready as I'll ever be. We went over the plan again, detail by detail, like generals before battle. Step 1. Stay calm. No matter what Daniel said, no matter how loud his voice rose, I had to stay collected. My silence would cut deeper than his rage. Step 2. Evidence. The folder Zoe and I had prepared would be revealed at the perfect moment when everyone's eyes were on us. His family, his friends, his business partners. There would be no escaping. Step 3. Walk away. No screaming, no begging, no second chances. Just the truth laid bare, and then silence. Meanwhile, across town, Daniel poured himself a glass of whiskey. He leaned back in his chair, scrolling through his phone, smiling smugly at messages from people confirming tomorrow's event. He thought it was his show, his perfect anniversary party, a celebration of his charm, his success, his flawless image. Little did he know it would be his undoing. "Emma's been distant," he muttered to himself, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "But tomorrow, I'll win her back. She won't dare question me in front of everyone. She never does." The arrogance in his voice made my stomach turn, but that arrogance would be his downfall. Back in my bedroom, I placed the folder of evidence into my purse. My hands lingered on it for a moment, feeling the weight. It wasn't just paper, it was justice. It was freedom. For Zoe. For me. For every moment we had been made to feel small, invisible, replaceable. Tomorrow, he'd learn just how unforgettable we really were. I closed my eyes, whispering a silent promise to myself. No more lies. No more silence. Tomorrow, the truth speaks. And for the first time in months, I slept soundly. The morning of the party felt unreal. The sun shone too brightly. The air smelled too sweet. It was almost mocking me, like the universe had dressed itself up for Daniel's performance. I slipped into my black silk dress, simple yet elegant. Not the red one Daniel had once insisted I wear, the kind that screamed obedience. This dress was mine, my choice. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a broken wife anymore. I saw a woman sharpening herself into steel. The venue glittered with gold and white decorations. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, tables draped with perfect linens, candles flickering in crystal holders. Guests began to arrive in polished suits and shimmering gowns, their laughter echoing like music. Daniel thrived in this setting. He moved through the crowd with effortless charm, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, flashing that politician's smile. To anyone watching, he was the perfect husband, the perfect man. But I knew better, and soon they all would too. Zoe arrived quietly, slipping in unnoticed. She wore navy blue, her hair pinned back neatly, her face calm, but her eyes burning with fire. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. One look was enough. Tonight, we were allies. As the party swelled, Daniel took the stage. He raised a glass, his voice booming with confidence. To love, he declared. To loyalty, to family, to the bonds that keep us together. The irony nearly choked me. People cheered, glasses clinked, music swelled. And for a moment, I could almost see him believing his own lie, that he was the center of this shining world, untouchable. But just beneath the surface, the cracks were spreading. Zoe leaned close to me, whispering as the applause faded. You ready? I nodded, my fingers brushing the folder in my purse. Step 1 was complete. Smile, blend in, wait. Step 2 was about to begin. Daniel caught my eye across the room and smirked, as though daring me to contradict the perfect picture he was painting. Poor Daniel, he still thought it was his game. The music softened, the lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the room as Daniel prepared to give his grand anniversary toast. He stood tall, wineglass in hand, his smile wide and rehearsed. Tonight, he began, his voice smooth as velvet, we celebrate love, resilience, and the kind of bond that only grows stronger through the years. Emma, my beautiful wife. My stomach turned. I could see him painting himself as the devoted husband. Every word a carefully polished lie, but not for long. I stood up slowly. My heels clicked against the polished floor, echoing louder than the murmurs of guests who turned toward me in surprise. Daniel, I said clearly, cutting through his speech. Shall we tell them what we're really celebrating tonight? The smile on his face flickered just for a second. Only I noticed. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. Some chuckled nervously, assuming I was teasing. Others leaned forward, curious. I pulled the folder from my purse and set it on the nearest table. Pages slid out. Photos, receipts, printouts of late-night texts. Gasps filled the room. And then Zoe stepped forward. Calm, steady, her presence like a blade slicing through the air. She looked Daniel dead in the eyes. Maybe you should explain why your promises of loyalty extended to both our marriages. The silence was suffocating. Whispers turned to murmurs. Faces turned toward Daniel, waiting for his denial, his defense. But for the first time that evening, he looked unprepared. He laughed weakly. This is ridiculous. These are lies. Fabrications. But Zoe's voice didn't shake. Lies don't come with receipts, Daniel. I added softly yet firmly, and they don't leave lipstick on hotel pillows. The crowd erupted. Some people gasped. Others whispered furiously, eyes darting between me, Zoe, and Daniel. A few stared at him with open disgust, shaking their heads. The illusion of control shattered like glass dropped onto marble. Daniel tried to raise his voice over the chaos, his charm slipping into desperation. Emma, please, we don't have to do this here. Let's step outside. No, I cut him off. My voice was steady, even as my heart pounded. You taught me silence was loyalty. Tonight, I'm choosing truth instead. For a long, terrible moment, Daniel stood frozen, his smile gone, his mask broken. And in that silence, for the first time in years, I felt free. The room buzzed with whispers, the tension sharp as broken glass. Daniel stood there, sweating, cornered, stripped of his charm. For years, he had been the center of my world, the sun I orbited around. But now I saw him for what he really was, a man of shadows. The guests avoided his gaze. Zoe's calm fury still hung in the air, and me standing in the middle of the wreckage felt something unfamiliar but powerful, control. Daniel stepped toward me, his voice low, almost pleading. "Emma, don't do this. We can fix it. We can fix us." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw nothing worth fixing. "You broke us," I said quietly, but every ear in the room heard, "and I'm done bleeding for pieces of a man who was never whole." A collective gasp spread through the crowd. I picked up the last photo from the table, the one that captured him with Zoe in a hotel lobby, his hand on her waist. For years, I thought I was the weak one. Tonight, I realized strength wasn't about holding on, it was about letting go. So, I dropped the photo to the floor and walked away. The guests parted as I moved through them, my head held high. No tears, no shaking hands, just silence that carried more power than any scream could. Behind me, I heard Daniel call my name, but his voice sounded smaller than ever, almost pathetic. Zoe stayed behind too, her eyes meeting mine one last time. In that glance, there was no friendship, no alliance, just mutual understanding between two women who had been deceived by the same man. When I stepped outside, the night air was cool against my skin. For the first time in years, I felt it freedom. The world hadn't ended, the sky hadn't fallen. Life, as fragile and unpredictable as it was, stretched wide open before me. I wasn't walking into the darkness. I was walking into my beginning.